And let's go back and recap what we've seen from previous weeks. So Saul was Israel's first king. And the Lord chose him, and the Lord endowed him with blessings and benefits so that he could fulfill in a wholesome fashion the kingly office. Now, after a period of time, Saul's heart grew cold toward God, and he disobeyed God. And basically there comes a time in every person's life where the decision point happens. And so after a lifetime of God working with Saul, it has come to the place where it is made manifest that Saul will not be obedient to God, and that Saul has rejected God, and that consequently, as king, God has rejected Saul. So David is anointed the king, and what happens is that David bursts onto the scene of Israel by defeating Goliath, and then David continues to serve in the kingdom. And Saul, as David's star rises, Saul's star continues to fall. And as Saul's star falls, he gets more and more murderous toward the man who so obviously has been put there by God to replace him. So let's go to chapter 19. One day, Saul told his son Jonathan and his officers to kill David. But Jonathan liked David a lot, and he warned David, "My father is trying to have you killed, so be very careful. Hide in a field tomorrow morning, and I'll bring him there. Then I'll talk to him about you, and if I find out anything, I'll let you know." The next morning, Jonathan reminded Saul about the many good things David had done for him. Then he said, "Why do you want to kill David? He hasn't done anything to you. He has served in your army, and he has always done what's best for you. He even risked his life to kill Goliath. The Lord helped Israel win a great victory that day, and it made you happy." Saul agreed and promised, "I swear by the living Lord that I won't have David killed." Jonathan called to David and told him what Saul had said. Then he brought David to Saul, and David served in Saul's army just as he had done before. The next time there was a war with the Philistines, David fought hard and forced them to retreat. Verse 9. One night David was in Saul's home playing the harp for him. Saul was sitting there holding a spear when an evil spirit from the Lord took control of him. Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear, but David dodged and it stuck in the wall. David ran out of the house and escaped. Now, let's just take a moment here and look. What is the word of Saul worth? It's not worth anything. Just a few verses earlier, he had sworn by the living Lord that he won't have David killed. And now just a few verses later, Saul is at home having his night's entertainment. It just happens to be holding his spear. You know, what would that be like in today's thing? That would be like, Sri comes over to my house for some pizza. And there I am in my living room, just happening to twist the barrel on my revolver. Just happening to point it at him. Just happening to cock the weapon. Just happening to accidentally discharging it in his direction. I mean, come on. Saul is a man with murder on his mind. And why does he have murder on his mind? What's ultimately going on here? Is it the rivalry for the kingship? Well, partly. But why? Why would Saul even have it come into his mind to get rid of one of the most valuable soldiers in all of his kingdom? Let's go over to John chapter 3. John chapter 3. Remember, we opened up earlier today and we said about the desperately wicked nature of the human mind. Now in chapter 3 of John, everybody knows verse 16. But let's go to verse 19. And this will help us understand why Saul is doing what he's doing. So John chapter 3 verse 19. The light has come into the world, and people who do evil things are judged guilty because they love the dark more than the light. It's that simple. It's not hard. People love evil. It came into Saul's mind that wouldn't it just be spiffy, funny, and totally cool to run this spear through my choicest captain of the whole nation. Let's turn back to 1 Samuel 19. So David dodged, and it stuck, the spear, in the wall. David ran out of the house and escaped. Saul sent guards to watch David's house all night, and then to kill him in the morning. Do you see how evil escalates? When evil is hidden, it looks like you and the evil person are best friends. But once it's out, it's out. And now that it's absolutely clear to David that Saul means to murder him, what does Saul do? He steps it up. So he sends his guards to kill David in the morning. So Michal, David's wife, told him, if you don't escape tonight, they'll kill you tomorrow. She helped David go through a window and climb down to the ground. As David ran off, Michal put a statue in his bed. She put goat hair on its head and dressed it in some of David's clothes. Do you see here? This is the mannequin in the bed routine in real life. The next morning, Saul sent guards to arrest David, but Michal told them David is sick. So Saul sent the guards back and told them, get David out of his bed and bring him to me so I can have him killed. When the guards went in, all they found in the bed was the statue with the goat hair on its head. Why have you tricked me this way? Saul asked Michal. You helped my enemy get away, she answered. He said he would kill me if I didn't help him escape. Do you see the black hole of evil that is Saul? He literally calls his daughter's love and loyalty toward himself into question because he doesn't get his enemy, and she thinks that she's involved in some way. Do you see how evil this man has fallen and become? He's now at the point where he's got his own daughter, metaphorically, by the throat. And if he doesn't have any qualms about ending the life of David, do you think he'll have any qualms about ending the life of his own daughter if he thinks she's crossed him? Now I'm going to say some hard words, friends, and God help me to say them right. It's not just that abortion is wrong, although it's wrong. It's not just that. But I want to tell you something right now. How are you going to partner in a society with someone who ended the life of their own baby when it got inconvenient, when it got in their way? Let me rephrase it another way. If they ended the life of their own offspring when it got inconvenient, what's going to happen to you when you become an inconvenience in their lives? I'm not trying to judge or be condemnatory or hate on women or hate on anybody, but I want to tell you this much. I don't think I'm going to get any better treatment. I'm not even your offspring. And if you ended the life of your own offspring, may the Lord keep me from crossing you. Look at Saul. He's the king. What's he going to do? Whatever it takes. Where's the bottom of the evil depths to which he's falling? There is no bottom. There's nothing he will not stoop to do. There's no evil too low. There's no person above his wrath if they get in his way. And I want to tell you right now, think about that in your marriage. Think about that in your business partnerships. Think about that in your job. Think about that in your voting patterns. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not ordering you to vote for this party or that. I'm not pointing a finger at you and condemning you if you have somebody in your family who's gone down a path like this. Here's what I'm saying. Sin is so evil that it turns father against daughter. It turns king against loyal subject. And it turns the king against God. When that happens, there is no limit to the bursting out of evil that can happen and that can occur. And this is why God hates sin. It's not just that God is a fuddy-duddy who doesn't want you to have some fun, so he's going to give you a whole bunch of rules so you don't have fun. It's that when somebody falls into the depth of sin, he is a danger to himself and to everyone around him. Let's continue verse 18. Meanwhile, David went to Samuel at Ramah and told him what Saul had done. Then Samuel and David went to Prophet's village and stayed there. Someone told Saul, "David is at Prophet's village in Ramah." Saul sent a few soldiers to bring David back. They went to Ramah and found Samuel in charge of a group of prophets who were all prophesying. Then the Spirit of God took control of the soldiers and they started prophesying too. When Saul heard what had happened, he sent another group of soldiers, but they prophesied the same way. He sent a third group of soldiers, but the same thing happened for them. Finally, Saul left for Ramah himself. Do you not see it? Saul is never going to stop. When evil sets its sights on you, or when it sets its sights on me, God help you, because it will never stop. It just won't. Forgive me for getting political. I really don't try to be overly political, but sometimes things just hit you in the face. Is it not clear that no matter what a certain political leader does in office, there will be enemies who will absolutely not stop until that political leader is destroyed? They will not stop. They have murder on their mind. I want to tell you right now, pray for that political leader. You can insert whichever party you want there, and you can insert whichever leader you want there. But I want to tell you right now, the same evil that lived in Saul is running wild in this nation today. We have people wishing death upon their ideological opponents so that they can win and get power in the next election. God help us. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're a faithful taxpayer. It doesn't matter if you're a loyal general in the army. It doesn't matter if you're a sitting senator with decades of service. If you cross people today who are like Saul, they will not stop until you are destroyed. It won't stop. So here's Saul. And by the way, look at the mercy and the common grace of God towards Saul here. Even as Saul bends his every possible achievement towards the killing of David, even as Saul uses every means at his disposal to end the life of the man he hates, how does God oppose him? God sends a prophesying spirit upon the soldiers who are sent to arrest David. And he doesn't do it once. He doesn't do it twice. And he does it 3 times. You've seen a picture of evil in Saul. We'll look again and see the picture of good in God. If at any point in time Saul would have turned from his evil ways, he would have found a God willing to accept him. But Saul has no room in his heart for this. Okay, so here we are. Finally, Saul left for Ramah himself. He went as far as the deep pit in the town of Sechu, and he asked, "Where are Samuel and David?" By the way, do you see what's happened here? He's put 2 and 2 together. He knows that Jonathan's against him. He knows that Michal is against him. He knows that David is against him. And now he's figured out Samuel is against him. What has Samuel ever done to King Saul? Nothing. This is why, take a look. I apologize. I really hadn't intended to go political. Whatever you want to call the conflict that's happening in the streets of this nation. And by the way, I fully see and respect that different people are doing different things. Not everybody's doing the same thing. I understand that. But I saw a guillotine. An actual guillotine in the streets in Seattle, outside the house of a wealthy man. Now, I don't care what that wealthy man's politics are. A guillotine This is right out of the French Revolution. A revolution, by the way, which was secular in nature. A revolution explicitly secular and explicitly founded on the ideas of liberty and equality and brotherhood, as understood by secular humanists and people who had the rallying cry, no gods, no masters. An atheist revolution, if you will. And now, today in the United States of America, there's a guillotine in the streets. You know, I know you're looking for a starting gun. You say, boy, well, if something ever happens, then I know it's time to go. Boom. I know we've crossed a line. Boom, I know something has happened and I have to take action. I have to tell you, friends, if that line hasn't been crossed when there's a guillotine in the streets, when is it going to be? What's it going to take for us to wake up and recognize that something terrible, something wicked this way has come? It's in the streets of our own land. And my friends, you can argue it's symbolic all you want. But Saul only had that spear in his hand symbolically when David was over there. So, Saul left for Ramah. But as he walked along, the Spirit of God took control of him, and he started prophesying. Then, when he reached Prophet's village, he stripped off his clothes and prophesied in front of Samuel. He dropped to the ground and lay there naked all day and all night. That's how the saying started. Is Saul now a prophet? God is so good. The mercy of God is so rich. If you or I fall 10,516 times, God is there to catch us, to restore us, to bring us back into a right fellowship. We see it here. Saul is coming after David and Michal and Jonathan and Samuel with everything his wicked heart can throw. And still God's response is mercy. One more time. One more time. Let's go to chapter 20 here. David escaped from the prophet's village, and he ran to Jonathan and asked, "Why does your father Saul want to kill me? What have I done wrong?" Jonathan said, "My father can't be trying to kill you. He never does anything without telling me about it. Why should he hide this from me? It can't be true." What are we hearing in this culture as people are putting guillotines in the streets, as people are ending the lives of their own offspring in record numbers, as people are determined to advance the cause of outright evil? They've got family members who are sitting by going, "I can't believe it's that bad. It's not like that." No, you're misreading it. You're reading too much into it. No, surely I would know. Jonathan's right in the same boat. So David says in verse 3 to him, "Jonathan, I swear it's true. Your father knows how much you like me, and he didn't want to break your heart. That's why he didn't tell you. I swear by the living Lord and by your own life that I'm only one step ahead of death." Then Jonathan said, "Tell me what to do, and I'll do it." David answered, "Tomorrow is the new moon festival, and I'm supposed to eat dinner with your father. But instead, I'll hide in a field until the evening of the next day. If Saul wonders where I am, tell him David asked me to let him go to his hometown of Bethlehem. so that he could take part in the sacrifice his family makes there every year. If your father says, it's all right, then I'm safe. But if he gets angry, you'll know he wants to harm me. Be kind to me. After all, it was your idea to promise the Lord that we would always be loyal friends. If I've done anything wrong, kill me yourself. Don't hand me over to your father. Don't worry, Jonathan said. If I find out that my father wants to kill you, I'll certainly let you know. How will you do that? David asked. Let's go out in this field and I'll tell you, Jonathan answered. When they got there, Jonathan said, I swear by the Lord God of Israel that 2 days from now I'll know what my father is planning. Of course I'll let you know if he's friendly toward you. But if he wants to harm you, I promise to tell you and help you escape. And I ask the Lord to punish me severely if I don't keep my promise. I pray that the Lord will bless you, just as he used to bless my father. Someday the Lord will wipe out all of your enemies. Then, if I'm still alive, please be as kind to me as the Lord has been. But if I'm dead, be kind to my family. Jonathan and David made an agreement that even David's descendants would have to keep. Then Jonathan said, I pray that the Lord will take revenge on your descendants if they break our promise. This is deep stuff. Jonathan thought as much of David as he did of himself. So he asked David to promise once more that he would be a loyal friend. After this, Jonathan said, by the way, before I get into what Jonathan said, do you see all the promising that has to go on here? When you enter into a sophisticated society, when you enter into this Byzantine sort of situation where evil masks itself as good, you're going to get a lot of situations where the word of people isn't worth very much. And so, what you'll notice is in these terrible, perilous times, people start asking each other to make promises. And even after people have made the promises, you never know what to believe. Or how much can I rely upon that? We saw earlier in the chapter, Saul had promised David he wouldn't harm him anymore. But that promise didn't mean anything. So now here both Jonathan and David are realizing their lives are on the line. And so Jonathan said, tomorrow is the New Moon Festival, and people will wonder where you are, because your place will be empty.